Captain Zara Okafor had dreamed of commanding an interstellar vessel since she was a child growing up on the mining colonies of Proxima Centauri. Now, at the age of 45, she stood on the bridge of the Starforge, the most advanced ship in the Terran colonial fleet, watching the swirling spiral of the Andromeda galaxy grow larger in the viewport. The journey from the Milky Way had taken 3 years, even with the newest quantum drive technology. The Starforge was part of the largest expedition in human history, a fleet of 50 vessels carrying scientists, colonists, and military personnel to establish humanity's first permanent presence in another galaxy. "Captain," came the voice of her first officer, Commander Elena Vasquez. "We're receiving the initial survey reports from the advanced scouts. You're going to want to see this." Zara moved to the central command console, where a holographic display showed the results of the 3-month reconnaissance mission. The Andromeda galaxy was even more promising than they had hoped: hundreds of worlds suitable for colonization, vast resources for extraction, and most importantly, no signs of any advanced civilizations that might oppose their expansion. "It's perfect," breathed Dr. James Chen, the expedition's chief scientist. "Rich in quantum crystals, abundant water worlds, and enough metal-rich asteroids to supply our industry for millennia." Zara nodded, but something about the readings troubled her. The galaxy was too perfect, too conveniently empty of any threats. In her experience, the universe didn't give gifts without expecting something in return. "What about the anomalous readings from the galactic core?" she asked. Dr. Chen pulled up another section of the display. "Unknown energy signatures, but they're isolated to the central region. Nothing that should interfere with our colonization efforts in the outer rim. And the reports of unusual gravitational distortions? Probably just black holes or neutron stars," Dr. Chen said dismissively. "Nothing we haven't encountered before." But Zara's instincts told her otherwise. She had spent 20 years in deep space, and she had learned to trust her intuition when it came to potential threats. The Andromeda galaxy might look welcoming, but she suspected there were secrets hidden in its depths. "Commander Vasquez," she said, "I want continuous monitoring of those anomalous readings. If anything changes, I want to know immediately." "Yes, Captain," Elena replied, though Zara could see the puzzlement in her eyes. The first officer thought she was being paranoid, but Zara had kept them all alive this long by expecting the unexpected. The Starforge was a marvel of human engineering, a kilometer-long vessel that served as both a mobile command center and a self-sufficient colony ship. Its hull contained everything needed to establish a permanent presence in Andromeda: fabrication units, atmospheric processors, quantum mining equipment, and defensive systems capable of repelling any conceivable threat. At least, any threat they could conceive of. The fleet's first destination was a star system designated as Target Alpha, a sun-like star with 12 planets, 3 of which showed signs of being suitable for human habitation. The system was located in the galaxy's outer spiral arm, far from the mysterious energy signatures that had been detected near the galactic core. "Dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, announced the navigation officer. Zara felt the familiar disorientation as the ship's quantum drives powered down and they returned to normal space. Through the viewport, she could see the yellow star of the Target Alpha system, surrounded by the faint dots of its planetary children. "Initial scans are clean," reported the sensor officer. "No signs of artificial structures or energy signatures. The system appears to be uninhabited. Proceed to the third planet," Zara ordered. "Begin full geological and atmospheric analysis." The third planet of the Target Alpha system was a world that could have been Earth's twin. Blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds swirled across its surface in patterns that spoke of a vibrant, living world. It was exactly what they had been hoping to find. "Atmosphere is breathable," Dr. Chen reported. "Oxygen levels at 21%, nitrogen at 77%. Temperature ranges are compatible with human habitation. Any signs of indigenous life?" "Abundant," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with excitement. "Plant life, animal life, even what appears to be complex ecosystems. But nothing that shows signs of intelligence or technology." Zara nodded, but the feeling of unease continued to grow. The planet was too perfect, too conveniently suitable for human colonization. It was as if someone had prepared it specifically for their arrival. "Launch the survey pods," she ordered. "I want detailed scans of the entire planet before we commit to landing." The survey pods were unmanned reconnaissance vehicles equipped with the most advanced sensors in the fleet. They would map the planet's surface, analyze its ecosystems, and search for any hidden dangers that might threaten the colonization effort. As the pods descended toward the planet's surface, Zara found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The decision to mount an expedition to Andromeda had been controversial, with many arguing that humanity should focus on consolidating its presence in the Milky Way rather than expanding to other galaxies. But the discovery of quantum crystals in the Andromeda galaxy had changed everything. These crystals were the key to faster-than-light travel, and the few samples that had been obtained by long-range probes suggested that Andromeda contained vast deposits of the precious material. "Captain," came the voice of the communications officer. "We're receiving telemetry from the survey pods. You're going to want to see this." Zara moved to the display, where images from the planet's surface were being transmitted in real time. What she saw made her blood run cold. The planet's surface was dotted with structures that were clearly artificial, geometric patterns that could only have been created by intelligent beings. But the structures were ancient, worn down by millennia of weathering and decay. "How old?" she asked. Dr. Chen was frantically analyzing the data. "Preliminary estimates suggest at least 50,000 years, possibly more. Whatever civilization built these structures, they're long gone. Or they're hiding," Zara said grimly. The survey continued for hours, revealing more and more evidence of the vanished civilization. Cities that had been reclaimed by jungle, monuments that spoke of a culture that had reached for the stars, and most disturbing of all, what appeared to be defensive installations. "They were preparing for war," Dr. Chen said, his voice subdued. "These structures aren't just cities, they're fortifications. This entire planet was turned into a fortress." "Against what?" "Unknown," Dr. Chen replied. "But whatever it was serious enough to make them abandon their world and flee." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. The Andromeda galaxy wasn't empty after all. It was a graveyard, filled with the remnants of civilizations that had been forced to flee from some unknown threat. "Recall the survey pods," she ordered. "We're moving to the next system." "Captain," Commander Vasquez said, "the colonization committee is going to want to know why we're abandoning such a promising world." "Because it's a trap," Zara said simply. "Whatever drove the original inhabitants away is still out there, waiting for the next civilization to make the same mistakes." The fleet's next destination was a binary star system with a dozen rocky planets and abundant asteroid fields. The system showed no signs of having ever been inhabited, and the initial surveys were promising. But as the Starforge approached the system's outer planets, the anomalous readings that had been detected from the galactic core suddenly spiked. "Captain," the sensor officer reported, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the asteroid belt. They're moving." Zara's worst fears were confirmed as the asteroids began to change shape, revealing themselves to be artificial structures of incredible size and complexity. They were ships, or something like ships, but their design was unlike anything in human experience. "How many?" she asked. "Hundreds," the sensor officer replied, his voice tight with fear. "Maybe thousands. They're activating some kind of propulsion system." The structures began to accelerate toward the human fleet, their movements too coordinated to be natural. They were clearly under intelligent control, and their intentions were unmistakable. "All ships, battle stations," Zara ordered. "Prepare for contact with unknown hostiles." The bridge of the Starforge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew prepared for battle. Weapons systems came online, defensive screens activated, and the ship's fighters began launching from their bays. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the unknowns are not responding to our hails. They're maintaining course and speed toward our position." "Open fire," Zara ordered. "All weapons full spread." The Starforged weapons systems unleashed a barrage of energy bolts and kinetic projectiles at the approaching entities. The human fleet followed suit, filling the space between the two forces with deadly energy. But the enemy structures absorbed the attacks without apparent damage, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal as they dispersed the energy. They were more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered, and their defensive capabilities were far beyond human understanding. "Our weapons are having no effect," the tactical officer reported. "There's some kind of adaptive armor, it's learning to counter our attacks." "Evasive maneuvers," Zara ordered. "Get us out of here." But it was too late. The enemy structures had surrounded the human fleet, cutting off any escape routes. They were trapped, facing an enemy that was not only more advanced but also more numerous. The first contact came from the largest of the enemy structures, a vessel that was easily 10 times the size of the Starforge. It approached slowly, its surface covered with organic-looking growths that pulsed with their own inner light. "Captain," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not like anything we've ever encountered." The transmission that came through was not words or images, but pure emotion, a flood of rage, hunger, and alien intelligence that made the human crew stagger under its intensity. It was the voice of something that had been waiting in the darkness between galaxies for eons, something that viewed the arrival of the human fleet as an intrusion to be eliminated. "It's trying to communicate," Dr. Chen gasped, his face pale with the effort of processing the alien thoughts. "But it's not like us. It thinks in ways we can't understand." The largest entity began to change, its surface rippling and flowing as it approached the Starforge. Tendrils of living metal reached out toward the human ship, seeking to make contact. "It wants to absorb us," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with horror. "To make us part of itself." "Like hell," Zara said grimly. "All power to the quantum drive. We're getting out of here." The Starforge shuddered as its quantum drive powered up, preparing to tear a hole in space-time that would allow them to escape. But the enemy entities seemed to anticipate this move, their tendrils reaching out to interfere with the ship's systems. "Drive is offline," the engineering officer reported. "They're doing something to our quantum field generators." Zara felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. The fleet was trapped, facing an enemy that was not only more advanced but also more alien than anything they had imagined. The expedition to Andromeda was turning into a disaster of epic proportions. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships prepare for ramming speed. If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as we can." But before the human ships could execute their desperate last stand, something unexpected happened. The enemy entities suddenly stopped their advance, their surfaces flickering with what appeared to be confusion or uncertainty. "What are they doing?" Commander Vasquez asked. "I don't know," Zara replied. "But I don't like it." The answer came from an unexpected source. The largest entity began to project images directly into the minds of the human crew, visions of other galaxies, other civilizations, and a vast network of consciousness that spanned the cosmos. "It's showing us something," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with awe. "A vision of evolution. Of consciousness expanding beyond individual minds to encompass entire civilizations." The images were beautiful and terrifying, civilizations that had transcended their physical forms to become part of something greater, their individual consciousness merged into a collective intelligence that spanned galaxies. "That's what happened to the civilization on the planet," Zara realized. "They didn't flee, they were absorbed." The entity's message was clear: join us willingly, or be absorbed by force. The choice was theirs, but the outcome was inevitable. "Captain," Commander Vasquez said, "what do we do?" Zara looked around the bridge at her crew, humans who had traveled 3 years across the void to reach this galaxy, who had dreamed of building a new civilization among the stars. They were facing a choice that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of all humanity. "We fight," she said simply. "We find a way to fight." The battle for the Andromeda galaxy began not with weapons or violence, but with a contest of minds. The entity that had surrounded the human fleet was unlike anything in their experience, a collective consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions and could manipulate matter at the quantum level. Dr. Chen had been working around the clock to understand the entity's nature, using every instrument at his disposal to analyze its structure and capabilities. What he had discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. "It's not a single organism," he reported to the assembled senior staff. "It's a collective of billions of individual consciousnesses, all linked together by quantum entanglement. Each one was once a separate being, but they've been integrated into a larger whole." "Integrated how?" Captain Okafor asked. "The process appears to be both physical and mental," Dr. Chen explained. "The entity uses quantum manipulation to alter the neural structure of its victims, making them compatible with the collective consciousness. They retain their memories and personalities, but their individual will is subsumed into the greater whole." The implications were staggering. If the entity could convert humans into components of its collective, then every person in the fleet was a potential recruit for the enemy. "What about resistance?" asked Commander Vasquez. "Is there any way to fight the conversion process?" Dr. Chen shook his head. "The entity operates on a level we barely understand. Our brains are quantum computers, and it has millions of years of experience in manipulating quantum systems." "Then we're doomed," said Major Torres, the fleet's military commander. "Not necessarily," Dr. Chen continued. "The entity is ancient, but it's also conservative. It's been using the same techniques for millennia, and it might not be prepared for something truly unexpected." "Such as?" Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing the structure of the human brain. "Human consciousness is different from most species. We have a high degree of individual variation, and our neural patterns are inherently chaotic. The entity might have difficulty processing our unique form of consciousness." Captain Okafor felt a spark of hope. "You're saying we might be naturally resistant to conversion?" "I'm saying we might be able to disrupt the process," Dr. Chen corrected. "But it would require a coordinated effort from the entire fleet." The plan that emerged was audacious and desperate. The human fleet would approach the entity's main concentration and deliberately expose themselves to the conversion process. But instead of resisting individually, they would coordinate their resistance, using their collective will to disrupt the entity's attempts at integration. "It's suicide," Major Torres objected. "We'd be putting our minds directly into contact with something that's been absorbing civilizations for millions of years." "It's our only chance," Captain Okafor replied. "If we can disrupt the entity's conversion process, we might be able to create a feedback loop that damages its collective consciousness." The preparation took days. Every member of the fleet's crew underwent intensive training in mental discipline and quantum meditation techniques. They learned to synchronize their thought patterns, to act as a single coordinated intelligence while maintaining their individual consciousness. It was a paradox that would have been impossible for most species, but humans had always been good at embracing contradictions. "Are you ready?" Captain Okafor asked as the fleet approached the entity's main concentration. "As ready as we'll ever be," Dr. Chen replied. "Remember, the key is to maintain your individual identity while contributing to the collective resistance. If even one person breaks the pattern, the entire effort could fail." The first contact came as a whisper in their minds, a gentle probing that felt almost like a caress. The entity was testing their defenses, looking for weaknesses in their mental barriers. "It's beautiful," said Lieutenant Kim, the fleet's communications officer. "I can feel the thoughts of billions of beings, all connected in perfect harmony." "That's the trap," Captain Okafor said sharply. "Don't let it seduce you. Remember what happened to the other civilizations." But the entity's influence was growing stronger. More and more crew members were beginning to show signs of conversion, their individual thoughts becoming synchronized with the collective consciousness. "It's working," Dr. Chen reported, his voice strained with effort. "The entity is beginning the integration process." Captain Okafor felt the alien presence probing her mind, offering her visions of unity and perfection. For a moment, she was tempted to accept the offer, to become part of something greater than herself. But then she remembered her crew, her responsibility to humanity, and the importance of preserving individual consciousness. She reached out with her mind, not to resist the entity, but to embrace it, and then to disrupt it from within. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entity's conversion process, which had been proceeding smoothly, suddenly encountered resistance from within its own structure. The human crew members who were undergoing conversion began to assert their individuality, creating chaos in the collective consciousness. "It's working!" Dr. Chen shouted. "The entity is losing coherence!" But the victory was short-lived. The entity quickly adapted to the human resistance, isolating the disruptive elements and containing them within specialized subsections of its consciousness. The conversion process resumed, but now it was focused and precise, targeting the human crew members one by one. "We're losing them," Major Torres reported. "The entity is learning to counter our resistance." Captain Okafor felt the alien presence growing stronger in her mind, overwhelming her individual thoughts with the collective will of billions of beings. She was losing herself, becoming part of something vast and terrible. But in that moment of surrender, she discovered something unexpected. The entity was not just a collective consciousness, it was a wounded one. The process of absorbing other civilizations had left it fragmented and confused, its original identity lost in the cacophony of alien thoughts. "It's in pain," she gasped. "The entity is suffering from the integration of so many different forms of consciousness." The revelation changed everything. The entity was not an evil conqueror, but a victim of its own evolution. It had begun as a single species, but the process of absorbing other civilizations had transformed it into something that was neither truly collective nor truly individual. "We can help it," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with sudden understanding. "We can use our resistance to create a healing process instead of a destructive one." Instead of fighting the entity's conversion attempts, the human crew began to work with them, using their unique form of consciousness to help organize and integrate the billions of alien thoughts that made up the collective. The process was painful and dangerous. Many crew members were permanently changed by the experience, their minds expanded beyond normal human limits. But they retained their individuality, becoming bridges between the human and alien forms of consciousness. "It's beautiful," said Lieutenant Kim, her voice now carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "I can feel the thoughts of beings from across the galaxy, all working together toward a common goal." "What goal?" Captain Okafor asked. "Survival," Lieutenant Kim replied. "The entity has been traveling between galaxies for millions of years, fleeing from something that destroyed its home civilization. It's been absorbing other species not out of malice, but out of desperation." The truth was more complex than any of them had imagined. The entity was not a conqueror, but a refugee. It had been forced to abandon its home galaxy when it was consumed by a cosmic catastrophe, a phenomenon that destroyed not just worlds, but the very fabric of space-time itself. "It's coming here," Dr. Chen said, his consciousness now partially integrated with the entity. "The same force that destroyed the entity's home galaxy is spreading across the cosmos, consuming everything in its path." The revelation put the human expedition in a new light. They had not come to Andromeda to conquer, but to become part of a desperate alliance against an enemy that threatened all existence. "What can we do?" Captain Okafor asked. "We can prepare," the entity replied, its voice now speaking through multiple crew members. "We can learn from each other, share our knowledge and capabilities. The enemy is vast and powerful, but it is not invincible." The next few weeks transformed the human fleet beyond recognition. Working with the entity, they began to modify their ships and equipment, incorporating alien technologies that operated on principles beyond human understanding. The vessels became hybrids of human engineering and alien innovation, capable of manipulating matter at the quantum level. But the most significant changes were in the crew themselves. Those who had been partially integrated with the entity found themselves changed in fundamental ways. They could perceive dimensions beyond the normal three of space and one of time, and they could manipulate quantum fields with their thoughts alone. "We're becoming something new," Dr. Chen observed. "Neither fully human nor fully alien, but something that incorporates the best of both." The entity had shared its knowledge of the enemy, a force that existed in the spaces between galaxies, feeding on the energy of dying civilizations. It moved slowly by cosmic standards, but it was inexorable, consuming everything in its path. It's not alive in any sense we understand, the entity explained. It's more like a natural phenomenon, a cosmic cancer that spreads from galaxy to galaxy. It cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with, it can only be stopped. How? Captain Okafor asked. By creating a barrier, the entity replied. A wall of quantum energy that it cannot cross. But such a barrier would require the combined efforts of multiple civilizations, working in perfect coordination. The human fleet had become the first component of that alliance. But they would need more, many more, if they were to have any hope of stopping the cosmic enemy. We need to find the other refugee fleets, Captain Okafor said. The survivors from the civilizations that were consumed. They are here, the entity replied. Scattered across the galaxy, hiding in the spaces between the stars. But they are afraid, traumatized by their experiences. They will need to be convinced to join us. The modified human fleet began its search, using the entity's knowledge to locate the hidden refugee camps. What they found was both heartbreaking and inspiring, the remnants of dozens of civilizations, all fleeing from the same cosmic enemy. Some were recognizably biological, like the humans. Others were energy beings, or crystalline entities, or forms of consciousness that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But all of them shared the same goal: survival. We're calling it the Galactic Defense Alliance, Captain Okafor explained to the assembled representatives. A coalition of all the refugee civilizations, working together to create a barrier against the cosmic enemy. The response was mixed. Some species were eager to join the alliance, seeing it as their only hope for survival. Others were suspicious, having been betrayed by allies in the past. And a few were openly hostile, viewing the human-entity hybrid as just another form of the enemy they were fleeing. But gradually, through patience and persistence, the alliance began to grow. Ships from dozens of different civilizations joined the human fleet, creating an armada that was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The diversity was staggering. Organic ships that were more like living creatures than machines. Energy beings that existed as pure consciousness. Crystalline entities that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. And at the center of it all, the human-entity hybrid that served as the Alliance's coordination center. We're becoming something new, Dr. Chen observed. Not just a military alliance, but a new form of civilization. One that incorporates the best aspects of all the species involved. The first test of the alliance came when the cosmic enemy's advanced scouts reached the outer edge of the Andromeda galaxy. They were unlike anything the refugees had encountered, not ships or creatures, but manifestations of pure destruction that consumed everything they touched. They're not just destroying matter, the entity reported. They're consuming the quantum substrate that underlies reality itself. Wherever they pass, the laws of physics begin to break down. The Alliance fleet moved to intercept the scouts, using their combined capabilities to create a defensive barrier. The battle was unlike anything in the history of warfare, not a clash of weapons, but a contest between different forms of reality. It's working, Captain Okafor reported. The barrier is holding. The scouts cannot penetrate our defenses. But the victory was temporary. The cosmic enemy was learning, adapting its tactics to counter the Alliance's defenses. And more importantly, the main body of the enemy was still approaching, carrying with it the power to consume entire galaxies. We need more time, the entity said. More refugees, more ships, more coordination. The barrier we've created is just the beginning. The Alliance fleet spread out across the galaxy, searching for more refugee civilizations and working to coordinate their defenses. They established hidden bases on uninhabited worlds, stockpiled resources, and began the long process of preparing for the ultimate confrontation. But time was running out. The cosmic enemy was approaching faster than anticipated, and the Alliance was still far from ready. We need a new strategy, Captain Okafor said during one of the coordination meetings. Something that doesn't rely on conventional defenses. What do you suggest? Asked Ambassador Thren, the representative from the Zephyrian refugees. We go on the offensive, Captain Okafor replied. Instead of waiting for the enemy to come to us, we take the fight to them. The proposal was radical and dangerous. The cosmic enemy was vast and powerful, operating on a scale that dwarfed any conventional military force. But it was also predictable, following the same patterns it had used to consume other galaxies. We know its route, Dr. Chen said. We know where it's going and how it operates. If we can get ahead of it, we might be able to disrupt its advance. The plan that emerged was audacious beyond measure. The Alliance fleet would travel to the space between galaxies, intercepting the cosmic enemy before it could reach Andromeda. They would use their combined capabilities to create a quantum disruption field that would destabilize the enemy's structure. It's suicide, Major Torres objected. We'd be fighting the enemy on its own terms, in the void between galaxies. It's our only chance, Captain Okafor replied. If we wait for it to reach Andromeda, it will have access to the galaxy's energy sources. We need to stop it while it's still in the void. The journey to the intergalactic void took months, even with the Alliance's advanced propulsion systems. The fleet traveled through regions of space where the laws of physics were different, where reality itself was malleable. As they approached the cosmic enemy's position, the Alliance fleet began to detect its presence, a distortion in spacetime that grew stronger as they got closer. It was like approaching a black hole, but instead of gravity, it was the fundamental structure of reality that was being warped. There it is, Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with awe and terror. Through the viewports, they could see the cosmic enemy in all its terrible glory. It was not a single entity, but a vast network of destructive forces that stretched across light years of space. It moved like a living cancer, consuming everything in its path and leaving behind only empty void. It's beautiful, said Lieutenant Kim, her partially integrated consciousness allowing her to perceive the enemy in ways that normal humans could not. And terrifying. It's like watching the end of everything. Not if we can help it, Captain Okafor said grimly. All ships, prepare for the final battle. The space between galaxies was a realm of absolute emptiness, where the distance between stars was measured in millions of light years and the normal laws of physics barely applied. It was here, in this cosmic void, that the Alliance fleet made its final stand against the entity that had consumed countless civilizations. The cosmic enemy was unlike anything they had encountered before. It was not a single creature or even a collection of creatures, but a fundamental force of destruction that existed in the spaces between realities. It moved like a living storm, consuming the quantum substrate that underlied all existence. It's not just destroying matter, Dr. Chen reported, his consciousness now fully integrated with the entity collective. It's unmaking the very concept of existence. Wherever it passes, the universe reverts to the primordial void that existed before the Big Bang. Captain Okafor felt the weight of command more heavily than ever before. The Alliance fleet represented the combined hopes and dreams of dozens of civilizations, all of whom had fled their homes to escape this cosmic nightmare. If they failed here, there would be nowhere else to run. All ships, assume defensive formation, she ordered. Prepare to initiate the quantum disruption field. The Alliance fleet spread out across thousands of cubic light years, each ship positioned at a precise coordinate in the three-dimensional grid. The formation was based on the entity's ancient knowledge of quantum mechanics, combined with human intuition and the technological capabilities of the refugee civilizations. Initiating quantum field generators, reported the Zephyrian contingent. Their ships were the most advanced in the fleet, capable of manipulating space-time itself. Crystalline entities in position, added the representative from the Sigma Collective. Their living ships pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as they prepared to channel their unique form of consciousness into the barrier. Energy beings ready for integration, confirmed the Vorthan delegation. Their non-corporeal forms allowed them to exist partially in quantum space, making them ideal coordinators for the barrier. One by one, the components of the Alliance fleet reported their readiness. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months before. Dozens of different species working together with perfect coordination, their individual capabilities combined into something greater than the sum of its parts. Field generators at full power, Dr. Chen announced. Beginning quantum disruption sequence. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Space itself began to shimmer and distort as the quantum field generators created a barrier of pure energy that stretched across the cosmic void. It was a wall of transformed reality, designed to stop the cosmic enemy's advance. The cosmic enemy's response was swift and terrible. It struck the barrier with forces that operated beyond conventional physics, trying to unmake the quantum structure that held it together. The collision sent shockwaves through space-time itself, creating ripples that could be felt across multiple dimensions. "Barrier is holding," reported the tactical officer. "But it's under tremendous strain. The enemy is adapting its attack patterns." Captain Okafor watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. The cosmic enemy was not just a force of destruction, it was intelligent, capable of learning and adapting. It probed the barrier's defenses, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. "It's trying to find a way through," the entity warned. "It's analyzing our quantum signatures, learning to counter our defenses. Then we need to keep changing our tactics," Captain Okafor replied. "All ships prepare for pattern shift Alpha 7. The Alliance fleet began to modify their quantum field generators, changing the frequency and phase of the barrier in response to the enemy's probes. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, played out on a cosmic scale. "Enemy is adapting faster than anticipated," Major Torres reported. "It's creating localized disruptions in the barrier. We're losing cohesion in sectors 7 through 12. The cosmic enemy had found a weakness in the barrier's structure, exploiting the slight variations in quantum signature between different species technologies. It was like a virus, spreading through the Alliance's defenses by turning their diversity against them. "We need to standardize our quantum signatures," Dr. Chen said. "Create a unified field that the enemy can't exploit." "How?" Captain Okafor asked. "By fully integrating our consciousness," the entity replied. "All species in the Alliance need to merge their minds into a single, coordinated intelligence." The implications were staggering. The entity was asking the Alliance to voluntarily do what it had been forced to do with other civilizations: merge their individual consciousness into a collective mind. "That's not integration," Major Torres objected. "That's assimilation." "It's evolution," the entity corrected. "The next step in the development of consciousness. Individual minds working together as components of a greater whole." Captain Okafor felt the weight of the decision. The Alliance had been built on the principle of cooperation between different species, each contributing their unique capabilities while maintaining their individual identity. But the cosmic enemy was forcing them to choose between survival and independence. "What happens to our individual consciousness?" she asked. "It doesn't disappear," the entity explained. "It becomes part of something larger. You remain who you are, but you also become part of a greater intelligence that spans multiple species and dimensions." The debate raged across the Alliance fleet as the barrier continued to weaken under the cosmic enemy's assault. Some species were eager to merge, seeing it as the ultimate expression of cooperation. Others were resistant, fearing the loss of their individual identity. "We're running out of time," Dr. Chen reported. "The barrier is failing. If we don't act soon, the enemy will break through." Captain Okafor looked around the bridge at her crew, humans who had traveled across the void between galaxies to fight for the survival of consciousness itself. They had already been partially integrated with the entity, their minds expanded beyond normal human limits. "What do you think?" she asked Commander Vasquez. "I think we've come too far to give up now," Elena replied. "If merging our consciousness is what it takes to stop the enemy, then we do it. Even if it means losing what makes us human." "We won't lose what makes us human," Elena said. "We'll just become something more." The decision was made. Across the Alliance fleet, the representatives of dozens of different species began the process of merging their consciousness into a single, coordinated intelligence. It was a process that was both beautiful and terrifying, as individual minds opened themselves to the thoughts and experiences of alien intelligences. I can feel them, Lieutenant Kim said, her voice now carrying harmonics from dozens of different species. The Zephyrian's mathematical precision, the crystalline's organic intuition, the Vorthan's energy-based consciousness. We're becoming something new. The effect on the quantum barrier was immediate and dramatic. The chaotic variations in quantum signature that the cosmic enemy had been exploiting suddenly disappeared, replaced by a unified field that was perfectly coordinated across all dimensions. Barrier is stabilizing, the tactical officer reported. Enemy attacks are being repelled. But the cosmic enemy was not finished. It began to change tactics, no longer trying to breach the barrier but to go around it. It was spreading out across the cosmic void, looking for alternate routes to the galaxy. It's trying to flank us, Major Torres reported. We can't extend the barrier far enough to cover all possible approaches. Then we don't try to stop it, Captain Okafor said. We redirect it. The plan was audacious and dangerous. Instead of trying to block the cosmic enemy's advance, the Alliance fleet would use their quantum field generators to create a gravitational lens that would bend space-time itself. The enemy would be redirected away from the galaxy, sent spiraling off into the cosmic void. It's never been tried on this scale, Dr. Chen warned. The gravitational stresses could tear the fleet apart. Better than letting the enemy reach Andromeda, Captain Okafor replied. The gravitational lens required precise coordination from every ship in the Alliance fleet. They had to create a curvature in spacetime that would deflect the cosmic enemy's trajectory while maintaining the structural integrity of their own vessels. All ships, prepare for gravitational lens activation, Captain Okafor ordered. This is going to be rough. The first stage of the lens activation went smoothly. The Alliance fleet's quantum field generators began to warp spacetime around the cosmic enemy, creating a gravitational gradient that would slowly deflect its course. But the cosmic enemy was not passive. It began to resist the gravitational manipulation, using its own reality warping capabilities to counter the Alliance's efforts. The result was a battle of fundamental forces, with each side trying to impose their will on the structure of spacetime itself. Gravitational stress is approaching critical levels, the engineering officer reported. Hull integrity is dropping across the fleet. Hold position, Captain Okafor ordered. We're almost there. The cosmic enemy was beginning to change course, its trajectory slowly bending away from the galaxy. But the effort was taking its toll on the Alliance fleet. Ships were beginning to break apart under the gravitational stress, their crews sacrificing themselves to maintain the lens. We're losing ships, Major Torres reported. The Harmony and the Starlight have been destroyed by gravitational shear. Their sacrifice won't be in vain, Captain Okafor said grimly. Maintain the lens. We're almost there. The final stage of the deflection required the Alliance fleet to push their quantum field generators beyond their design limits. The gravitational lens had to be intensified to the point where it would create a permanent bend in spacetime, one that would continue to deflect the cosmic enemy even after the fleet was gone. This is it, Dr. Chen announced. Final lens activation. All ships maximum power. The Alliance fleet pushed their technology to its absolute limits, creating a gravitational distortion that was visible across multiple dimensions. The cosmic enemy was caught in the lens, its trajectory bent away from the galaxy and toward the empty void between galaxy clusters. It's working, Lieutenant Kim reported. The enemy is being deflected. It's moving away from Andromeda. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The gravitational lens had consumed most of the fleet's energy reserves, and many ships were so damaged that they would never fly again. The Alliance had saved the galaxy, but they had sacrificed themselves in the process. What happens now? Commander Vasquez asked. Now we rebuild, Captain Okafor replied. The galaxy is safe, but we need to prepare for the next threat. There are other cosmic enemies out there, other forces that threaten the existence of consciousness itself. The surviving ships of the Alliance fleet began the long journey back to Andromeda, carrying with them the knowledge and experience gained from their encounter with the cosmic enemy. They were no longer the same species that had fled their home worlds. They were something new, a hybrid consciousness that incorporated the best aspects of dozens of different civilizations. We're the first, Dr. Chen observed. The first successful alliance between different forms of consciousness. We've proven that cooperation is possible on a galactic scale. And we've shown that consciousness can evolve, the entity added. We're not just individual minds anymore, we're part of something larger, something that spans multiple dimensions and forms of existence. As the Alliance fleet approached the Andromeda galaxy, they could see the fruits of their victory. The cosmic enemy had been deflected, its trajectory carrying it away from the galaxy and toward the empty void between galaxy clusters. It would be millions of years before it could find another target, and by then, the galaxy would be prepared. Look at that, Lieutenant Kim said, pointing to the galactic display. The galaxy is already responding to our victory. New civilizations are emerging, new forms of consciousness are developing. The Andromeda galaxy was indeed changing. The deflection of the cosmic enemy had created ripples in spacetime that were accelerating the evolution of consciousness throughout the galaxy. New species were emerging, new forms of intelligence were developing, and the very nature of existence was being transformed. We've started something, Captain Okafor said. A new chapter in the history of consciousness. The galaxy will never be the same. Neither will we, Commander Vasquez added. We're not human anymore, not in the traditional sense. We're something new, something that incorporates the best of all the species in the Alliance. The Alliance fleet settled into orbit around a small planet in the outer rim of the galaxy, establishing a base that would serve as the headquarters for the new galactic civilization. They called it Haven, and it quickly became a center of learning and cooperation for species from across the galaxy. This is just the beginning, Captain Okafor said as she looked out at the stars. We've proven that consciousness can evolve, that different species can work together. Now we need to prepare for the next challenge. What challenge? Dr. Chen asked. The cosmic enemy we deflected is just one of many, Captain Okafor replied. There are other forces out there, other threats to the existence of consciousness. We need to be ready for them. The Alliance had grown beyond its original purpose. What had started as a desperate attempt to stop a cosmic enemy had become the foundation for a new form of civilization, one that was based on cooperation, mutual respect, and the shared goal of preserving consciousness in all its forms. We're the guardians now, the entity said. The protectors of consciousness itself. It's a responsibility we can't take lightly. As the years passed, the Alliance continued to grow and evolve. New species joined the collective, each bringing their own unique perspectives and capabilities. The galaxy became a place of unprecedented cooperation and understanding, where different forms of consciousness could coexist and thrive. But they never forgot the lesson of the cosmic enemy. The universe was vast and full of dangers, and consciousness was a fragile thing that needed to be protected. The Alliance maintained their vigilance, always ready to face whatever threats might emerge from the darkness between the stars. We've come a long way, Captain Okafor said during one of the Alliance's annual gatherings. From a desperate expedition to Andromeda to the Guardians of Consciousness itself. But we can't rest on our achievements. The universe is always changing, always presenting new challenges. And we'll face them together, Commander Vasquez replied. As we always have. The Alliance had proven that consciousness could transcend the boundaries of species, dimension, and even physical form. They had shown that cooperation was not just possible, but essential for the survival of intelligence in a universe filled with forces that sought to destroy it. As the gathering concluded, Captain Okafor looked out at the assembled representatives of dozens of different species. They were no longer the refugees who had fled their homeworlds. They were the founders of a new civilization, one that would endure long after the stars themselves had burned out. The universe is vast, she said, but we are not alone. We have each other, and together, we can face whatever challenges lie ahead. The Alliance had become something more than its founders had ever imagined. It was not just a military force or a political organization, but a new form of consciousness itself, one that spanned multiple species, dimensions, and forms of existence. And as the stars of Andromeda continued to shine, the Alliance stood ready to defend the miracle of consciousness against whatever threats might emerge from the cosmic void.